Thank you for joining us today. This presentation is hosted by FAU and the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities in partnership with PUPSA. The mission is FAU Center for Autism and Related Disabilities provides expert consulting, training, and support at no charge for all people across all race, ethnic, and gender groups with autism and related disabilities, their families, employers, the professionals and community, and government agencies serving them. The vision for FAU CARD provides support and assistance with the goal of optimizing the potential of all people across all race, ethnic, and gender groups with autism and related disabilities. There are 5 counties served, and the services are offered at no charge. And the services that are included are family and school consultations, training and workshops, public education, referral and resources, adult hangout groups, and much more. So today we're going to be talking about promoting socialization of children and adolescents with AAC across a variety of social settings with peers. My name is James Ingrascia. I'm a speech-language pathologist and AAC specialist practicing out of Seattle, Washington. My clinical interests include AAC, parent and caregiver training, supporting culturally and linguistically diverse populations, social communication and autism, and coaching models for the schools. The learning objective for today are, number 1, describe different types of AAC or augmentative and alternative communication, different components of social communication as well. Number 2, identify functional skills and opportunities in the school to encourage social interactions with other students with AAC. And the last one, we'll talk about planning and executing an activity to encourage social skills depending on that student's interest levels as well. So let's start with some definitions. What is it? What is AAC and social communication? AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication, refers to any communication forms that we use as an augmentative in addition to, an alternative instead of. There are different types of forms of these types of communication, from no tech to high tech, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. But one thing I want to highlight is the aspect of AAC is the augmentative in addition to. Oftentimes we think of AAC for individuals who are nonverbal or minimally verbal, but AAC can help individuals who are verbal as well, help be a bridge for those who maybe have communication or language challenges as well. So there are different types of AAC. We'll start with no tech. No tech are communication forms such as ASL and other nonverbal cues, such as gestures, even intonation changes. We also have low tech. Low tech communication are things like PACS or picture exchange communication systems, communication boards or books, and written language. They usually have no voice output. It could be provided with pictures or just written. A challenge is that there are no voice output, which oftentimes we like to hear that feedback, or if it's in a busy room and maybe they're nonverbal, getting that attention can be a little bit more challenging. Sometimes it's also laborious to produce. Oftentimes we have to print, cut, laminate, cut again. But they are easily replicable and fairly easy to obtain. There are a lot of free communication supports out there for a lot of uses. Now we're going to talk about some mid-tech supports. Mid-tech are some devices that have some voice output, but they're usually pretty limited on message opportunities. The ones in the example under mid-tech here, the big green rectangle is a GoTalk. There are different varieties of GoTalks out there. We have a big yellow step-by-step with levels, which you can change the message by changing the levels. And then we have a lot of switch outputs where it's a single message. So you press the red one, it has one message, and then you press the blue one and it has a different message. What's great about these is that it does have some voice output. It's obviously a little bit more limited in terms of the types of communication out there, and you have to program it each time. But you can also program it with things such as songs. So if your learner is really motivated by songs, and to work for songs and to talk about songs, they can press it and it plays a song for them. It's really great for learning some cause and effects as well. The last section is high tech. It's usually robust, programmable. It may be expensive to replace, but there are possible opportunities to use some of the devices outside of just communication as well. In these particular examples, we have an eye gaze unit. Many of my eye gaze clients, they use eye gaze not just for communication, but to access a computer, to write things down for school. We also have a tablet, usually an iPad, which is the most common, with a communication app. In this picture, it is Proloco to Go. And then with either of those systems, they can also use dedicated switches, like in the bottom right. Those switches help activate a message on that robust system. We go through a variety of AAC in the evaluation process to see which one we use. One thing I want to know is that you can use a variety of communication methods, not just one. So if I use high tech, I can still benefit from some low tech supports and vice versa. So who uses AAC? Oftentimes we think of individuals who are maybe nonverbal or have challenges communicating, but it can also be helpful for those who are minimally verbal or who preferably are verbal. Oftentimes I like to think about many of us use a variety of AAC. Myself, while I am primarily verbal, I also like to communicate via text, emojis, using a variety of different communication methods. It's also really helpful if there's prominent use of echolalia or scripting. It helps decrease some of the verbal stimuli and increases some of those visual stimuli. Those with language challenges, it's great if they have challenges talking about a specific topic, that we can bring up a topic page and they're able to discuss it. Intelligibility. Intelligibility refers to how well someone is understood. So if they have challenges being understood, such as mumbling, challenges with articulation, it could be helpful for that. Behavior challenges and self-advocacy. Restricted pragmatic functions. So maybe they're only requesting, and we want them to talk about a variety of other topics or for a variety of reasons. It's helpful for that. Anyone and everyone is able to benefit from AAC. So why do we use AAC? We know maybe who can use it, but what are some more specific reasons that we use AAC? One of the first and helpful reasons that we use AAC is that it gives visual context to auditory stimuli, especially for those who maybe have language processing challenges or auditory processing challenges. Being able to see it really helps give a little bit more context. I like to think about it as providing subtitles in movies. Sometimes individuals like to watch movies with subtitles because you get to hear and see what's being discussed in the context. It also sets a context for communication. So if you have a page all about bubbles, that means we're talking about bubbles in this particular moment. It helps support literacy development. It showed that there was a study for preschoolers that discussed literacy gains when introduced to AAC early on, even if they were primarily verbal or not, because in a lot of AAC devices, it's read from left to right, as an example. It also helps with word retrieval and language learning. It provides an additional model for verbal imitation. You can use it to repair communication breakdowns. So if something's not being understood on one end or the other, it could be used to help repair those breakdowns. And it provides a voice that can be received by a wide range of partners. And it supports behavior and communication across the board. So we've talked about AAC. We'll talk about social communication. So the American Speech and Language and Hearing Association describes social communication as kind of different parts of social communication and how it relates. So there's social cognition, spoken language processing and written language processing, pragmatics, and social interactions. We'll talk about each of those, but this illustration demonstrates the relationship of the different parts of social communication. There are a lot of different aspects of social communication, and we'll talk about each of those. So the first one we'll talk about is social interaction. It's the rules of social engagement, and it may vary depending on the situations. So some of the examples are self-regulation, social tasks, conflict resolution, code switching. Code switching refers to knowing how to talk in one situation and maybe talk a different way in a different situation. Sometimes we use code switching usually with the idea of language. At home, I may speak Tagalog, but in the community where it's primarily English speakers, I might use English. It could also refer to different contexts such as dialects or the way and the formality of communication as well. The next part is social understanding. So the social cognition and executive functioning skills that are required to support social interactions. Some of the examples include theory of mind and perspective taking, attention, memory, inferences in the contexts. Another part is pragmatics. That's the language use in social contexts. So there's two forms, verbal, including the actual speech acts, discourse, prosody, the communication intent. There's also nonverbal pragmatics, such as body language, gestures, eye contact, proxemics, how close you are to another. And then there's the actual language processing. So producing is the expressive, understanding is the receptive, and this is regardless of AAC or verbal productions as well. But this also includes grammar, semantics as well. So when we think of those who may have social communication challenges, we often think of individuals who may have autism spectrum disorder or autism, which is a neurodevelopmental disorder. And they usually, it's presented with social communication deficits and usually restricted repetitive behaviors, interests, or activities. You can have a diagnosis of a social communication disorder, difficulties with the use of language for social purposes. The main difference between a social communication disorder and autism is the restricted and repetitive behavior section. In the DSM, that's the main signifier or difference between both of them. Social communication disorders can co-occur with other disabilities and not necessarily have autism as well. So it can co-occur with intellectual disabilities, other developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, language disabilities, and other acquired language disorders. Something to note is that social skills widely vary. Some students may be a part of multiple cultures, so they might be multicultural. And it's important, it depends even on the family. So even if we think of two families who are from the same area, they may have different importance of different social skills. And of course, it changes based on race and country of origin, language and dialects, region and location, socioeconomic status, and so much more. So this presentation does aim to respect the diversity within the population served, including the neurodiversity movement, all ability levels, cultural and linguistically diversity, and everyone. And I want to think about targeting skills that are important and relevant to the individual, not necessarily to yourself, but to the individual themselves. So the single best childhood predictor of adult adaptation is not school grades and not classroom behaviors, but rather adequacy with which the child gets along with other children. I think this is really important because this is one reason why social skills are so important. Why gaining friendships is also just really important for long-term development and adulthood. So I want to think about let's going beyond requesting and really building social skills with AAC, especially in schools where a lot of us learn social skills from others. So let's talk about AAC and social skills. I want to think about the concept of friendship skills and academic skills. Both of them are going to have social contexts, but how can we incorporate both of those into the school day or at home as well? So friendship skills include things like social creativity, initiation, connection, maintenance, repair skills, finding their place, leisure activities with others, interests. So these are all skills that we use to gain friendships, to make meaningful connections with others. But there are also social skills that are required for academic or functional purposes, such as the understanding classroom expectations, gaining attention effectively, self-care, job skills, still kind of finding their place, functional communication skills as well. So we'll kind of dive a little bit of both and talk about opportunities for each section. So we'll start with daily opportunities for friendship. So when we think about it, how do we make friends? When we want to build a relationship with others, how do we do that? And this is going to be kind of similar, whether it's going to be an adult or a school child as well. We talk about interests, and this can be applied to all ability levels, activities, movies, food, personal health, advocacy, life skills, anything. We talk about if we like this or we don't like things. This is how we like to engage with others. Many people join clubs and sports because that is a similar interest, and they like to be around people with similar interests. So we want to support all of our learners to be able to talk about these two. So you could incorporate talking about your interests kind of daily. You could do it in the classroom. You could do natural icebreakers. They all find maybe their favorite animal. They can all find what they like to do on the weekends. If it is someone who is a little younger, sometimes we do circle time or kind of a morning routine where you talk about the morning, but you can also talk about maybe a favorite thing that happened this weekend. Build some interest, talk about each other's hobbies. You can use group activities. You can use group activities and partners in classes, and it can be divided by preferences and interests. So as an example, individuals who like football could be all together, or individuals who like soccer can be grouped together, and that helps build some of the social connections when it might be a little bit harder already for some of our learners. We can also incorporate into learning activities. So they can do projects or school activities that are around their similar interests, and they could share that with others too. This is one of my favorite activities, is to talk about interests, because it is functional, because we all do it. And long-term, this is how we express others, especially if we have individuals who we're not sure if they're socially motivated or not, or maybe have challenges with connecting to others. Talking about their own interests effectively can be really helpful. And so I had a client in the past who used Dialogue AAC, which is that picture on the left, which is a typing communication app. We like to do music appreciation. We practice talking about likes and dislikes with music. We practice describing the music, like it's fast or it's slow, it's upbeat, it's fun, it's boring, using a variety of ways to talk about it and kind of stating their interests as well. So making sure that they say, my favorite song is Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. And so being able to do all of those things is going to be really important. Maybe we're just going to start at the like and dislike level, and that's okay. Maybe we'll just start at stating their interests, and that's okay. Maybe we'll start combining some of those. Whatever that individual's ability level is, we can start there and then build up on that once they feel more comfortable with it. One of the most important things is to program interests into their device. collaborate with other educators, paraeducators and teaching assistants, other therapists, parents and siblings. We want to be able to program the words or have contexts for many of these individuals who need extra support programming or to be able to talk about their preferred interests in the school settings or in other settings as well. For example, I had a client who loved Marvel and superheroes. And so for a long time, that device wasn't programmed with all of those topic words. And once we programmed some of those topic words, that individual loved to talk about it, ask people, do you like Spider-Man? Do you like Batman? Being able to talk about their interests. We also want to think about not just those single interests, but what kind of context words kind of go into it. So what kind of other vocabulary goes around it. So that my student may have liked Spider-Man, but can I include superhero, web shooters, all the things maybe around the context of Spider-Man. We also don't want to forget to program words to describe their interests. So it's funny, maybe with Spider-Man, it's exciting, it's funny. Thinking about how we can describe our interests as well. One helpful way is to think about topic pages. This is a topic page all about Play-Doh. You can use this topic page to think about how to talk about those interests. So in this case, the topic idea is Play-Doh, but we have other ways to describe it. So colors, big and little, different actions that go along with it. We also have some commenting skills. So on the bottom right-hand corner, there's also, that's funny, to talk about that interest. We also have some other content words to talk about, like I, me, myself, no, don't, all done, more, different, to work on some of those advocacy skills that are naturally entwined with it. In recent years, Fortnite has been really cool. And so as an example, for one of my learners, I had to do some research. You might have to do research to think about the interests or ask others, but maybe we're going to talk about win or lose, Xbox, Switch, or a computer. We talk about squads, which is a thing in Fortnite, and gliders. We want to make sure that we're providing all these content words to be able to build those connections with individuals, not just the word Fortnite in the device, but how can they talk about Fortnite as well. Something that's also really helpful are peer groups. Peer groups are helpful in supporting and identifying leisure activities. And so we want to help individuals identify these leisure activities effectively. You can make special interest groups, and they can be adapted based on the learner. You can use ones that are already there as well. If there is a video game club or a movie club, we can have our students be able to participate in that. You can also support and have siblings, if they're in the same grade level or if they're within the same school, be able to support some of those peer interactions as well. But thinking about special interest groups, it can be adapted for the day activity as well. So I know some of our learners may need extra support from a staff member to participate in activities around the school. So we can kind of think about the same kind of clubs that maybe do meet after school where a staff member may not be available to something during the day as well. So one example is I have a student who is interested in walking and in finding leads outside because in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest area, hiking is really common and there's a hiking club at that school. So to help kind of adapt that participation during school time so that they can participate, we did a nature club. So for the individuals participating, they would talk about nature, maybe a hike in the future, but to adapt it to the learner who needed extra support, we did it during lunchtime. And then we were able to find different leaves or different types of plants outside and work on adapting some of those leisure activities to help that individual connect with others who shared some similar interests. We also want to make sure AAC is in all environments as well. Sometimes we get stuck with AAC in the classroom or in their backpacks, but we want to be able to bring it across all different spaces. Lunchroom, resource room, recess, all the different types of classrooms, extracurricular activities, being able to bring the device everywhere is going to be important, because if they already require it, maybe during their IEP, they can use it to help build connections with others. One of my favorite places to kind of begin that bridge is during meals or snack time. You can use a lot of communication supports to talk about meals. A lot of times we use meals as a great way to connect with others. We go to dinners, we go to lunches together, brunch, and then we talk about things that are going on with us. Or we talk about our day at the end of the day. So we use mealtime naturally in a social context. We want to support individuals to, if they're interested, to be able to do that as well. You can also incorporate cooking or meal prep in that same way. Sharing foods, I know because of the pandemic, it's been a little bit harder for many, or not. Maybe they don't want to share, and that's okay too. They could say it. Shopping for favorites. So especially some of those future life skills or some of those transitional skills, thinking about how to shop for their favorites. You can use other pragmatic language, such as eating like a, and filling the blank. You can make it into some of the, to support literacy and some of those idioms and similes, and being able to combine other figurative language as well. You can use chat mats or placemats, which we'll see in a minute. Topic pages on the screen right now. This is a topic page for TD Snap, which has a bunch of content words for meals. And it's a lot of ready, quick and easy access words to be able to use it during mealtime. You can also work on using specific conversations, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So this is an example of a chat map. Oftentimes it's a low-tech board, regardless if they're using a high-tech device or not. But this is an ability for the individual to talk about foods. They talk about if it's yummy or yucky. They can request for different things. Oftentimes we use it, we laminate it so it could be wiped down afterwards, but it's automatically a way for that individual to make sure they have communication supports to talk about foods and talk about meal times. One of the easiest ways to kind of start that topic as well is to start with foods that they're interested. If they think it's yummy, or if they don't like it and they think it's yucky. It's a great way to start that conversation and of social skills, talking about some of those interests, which we'll see as well. We can also have and encourage students to talk about things that they're interested in. This is a video from Small Talk. The YouTube channel is Brakasam. And so this is a really great video that you can check out on YouTube that kind of gives an example about talking about interests or things that they find silly or entertaining.
What's your favorite food? Popsicle. Or
Aiden, you want to turn? Okay.
Mama. 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 Mama.
Aiden, no, we're not going to talk about bathroom talk at dinner.
Diarrhea.
Aiden. Oh my goodness, come on. All right, let's give Ethan back his choker.
Pee-pee.
Hey, Ethan.
Pee-pee.
No, we're not going to talk about bathroom talk at the dinner table.
Diarrhea.
No.
Diarrhea.
Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about? Because it's not bathroom talk time.
Poop.
Okay, all right.
Poop.
All done.
What I love about this video is that they start off talking about some interests. They talk about, in the beginning, talking about their favorite foods. And that was one way to begin that that conversation with one another. What I loved is that it evolved into a typical 4-year-old conversation, which they think talking about poop and pee is funny. And that's typical for the 4-year-olds. And so we can allow that communication and encourage that communication. Sure, there's that social context of talking about the bathroom words in a meal situation. But for many of these 4-year-olds, that's going to be typically appropriate. And so we want to think about that for many individuals, even if it's at lunchtime and talking about some of their interests. Let them talk and have their conversations, encourage it. What I also loved about this video as well is that it also talked about, or it had some examples of peer modeling. They all took a turn with the device talking about what they like, don't like, what they thought was funny, was not funny. And so that's a really great way to incorporate peers, is using some peer training, which we can talk about a little bit as well in the next sections. Other ways to support conversations is oftentimes we ask, what do you do this weekend? So in this example, in the picture, it's from Dialogue AAC, which is a communication app. You can create starters. And so oftentimes we ask, what did you do today? What did you do this weekend? You can create sentence starters to help bridge that communication gap, to help build these phrase-based sentences, to help expand their interest. So it's not just one word, but we can help them combine multiple words together. And so what did you do this weekend? We had some prep because that learner is literate and had some spelling skills, that we started with a phrase-based. So I played, and then they can go into the keyboard and talk about what they played. So they're able to talk about their interests, but also using a little bit more context to it. So like the past tense parts. For those maybe who need additional support, this is a custom page from Prologo to Go. And I programmed it so to talk about some of the things that they did today or the things that they did within this last week. You could use a button to talk about a single message. So I went outside, I went on vacation, I went to the store, I took a bus, I went to speech, I went to ABA. You can use all of these context words to talk about past events. Thinking about what you did over the weekend can be trying and challenging. It happens for me too. And so to give a little bit more context, it helps kind of bridge that gap with that language and communication as well. Oftentimes, I like to reach out to families to think about what's a typical weekend look like. And if I know they maybe went on vacation, I'll add some words ahead of time to talk about those interests. We can also think about it making sure that it's an active settings. Well, active settings are places where that learner might not sit in one place the whole time. So recess, gym, extracurriculars. Some things that I use for that are wristbands, keychains, special communication supports. There are a lot of different types of active communication. So if they use a high-tech device, sometimes I support them using low-tech devices, like on the playground, to support communication while they may be running. It might be hard for that individual to run with, let's say, an iPad with a communication app around the playground. It makes sense to me, but we can provide other communication supports out there. There's a variety that you can use. As an example, I made a lanyard or keychain for some individuals like this one or this one. I've also made different communication supports such as wristbands or bracelets The top part is kind of like a quarterback guard where they can see the communication supports. They can point to it on the playground. You can also make low-tech communication wristbands as well, where you cut the strip out, and then I use Velcro to kind of put it on and off. On the playground, sometimes there are many schools that have communication boards out there. The challenge with the communication board that's on the playground is that sometimes it breaks communication. So I like it breaks communication because if an individual wants to communicate maybe with another student, they have to leave maybe the swing set, go all the way to the communication board with that student, and then go back to that swing set. A lot of the communication breakdowns might occur in between that, or it might not be repaired because that lag that takes the time to do that. So some things that I like to do is places that are a little bit more active, like a playground, is to put communication supports like this in the bottom right-hand corner, my turn slide on the slide itself. So if another individual wants to turn, they could point to it, say, it's my turn for the slide, or whatever kind of activity that they're doing. Some things that we've done to also support communication from maybe a staff area is to help make AAC navigational scripts. So navigational scripts, I'll talk a little bit about throughout the time as well. Navigational scripts are scripts that help you navigate maybe a high-tech device to know where it is. So this is an example of a touch chat navigational script for hello and goodbye. The staff member, maybe a one-to-one staff member, might have it in the back of their lanyard that they have to carry. And so when that individual is practicing saying hello or goodbye to other people, that staff support can show the lanyard to show how to navigate to the hello button, if that's the topic. What's great about that is that we're trying to decrease physical supports and verbal supports and just using some visual supports to help go to that navigational script. So transitioning from some more of the social aspects and some of those friendship skills, we'll talk about some opportunities for functional skills at academics. Of course, we're going to work on some what we call basic skills. Basic skills are things like functional communication. I attended a presentation from Ines Peterson, an OT and AT specialist, who talks about basic skills, such as like the cause and effects, likes or dislikes for communication. Of course, we're going to work on those first and foremost. If they're not requesting or wants or needs, maybe they're an emergent communicator and they're not communicating effectively, we'll work on that. But outside of those things, I want to think about other skills as well. One of them being is advocacy. So advocacy for themselves and even for others too. So I like to use what I kind of coined as the FBI method for kind of the social emotional learning. So it starts with their feelings. So in this touch chat example, I will talk about feelings. And so we'll start talking about our feelings first by going to the describe page to talk about our feelings. Or if they press the feel button, which is the green one right here, that it will automatically bring up some feelings. So we'll start with trying to identify some feelings. And then we'll start with the because. Why are they feeling that way? I made a big section about options for that individual. These options are going to be dependent on the person. Oftentimes, my go-tos are they don't like the activity, it's hard, it's something else. This is oftentimes the hardest part with teaching some of these self-advocacy skills of why they're feeling that way, but we can start to model some of those even early on. And then the I can section, if they're feeling frustrated, for example, what can they do to help kind of self-regulate? So I have a huge section at the end to talk about things that are effective for that person. These, again, are going to be dependent on that person. Maybe deep breaths don't work for that person. Cool. Let's think of a different strategy that may be effective for them. So I program communication supports to help with this natural flow where it leads one to another. You can also have dedicated communication boards and choice boards all about behavior or self-advocacy for themselves. So if they don't have a high-tech device or don't have a device like this, I can screenshot this exact one that others can kind of use the same way, or I can make a little bit more of a dedicated board. And I like that FBI flow because it allows that processing of cause and effect through those emotions and what they can do as well. Some things that might be helpful as well are I like to have quick communication supports at a lot of students' desks or working area. So this is an example of I need a break, all done, bathroom or potty, wait, more, or I need help. And so sometimes we'll have a little version of these in the corner of the desk. So regardless if they are AAC users or not, that they can quickly advocate and go to it as well. Regardless if they need to. It also gives them a quick reminder that they can ask for help, that they can ask for more or they need a break. Another functional skill is something that we call strategic competencies. Strategic competencies are in the AAC world under the competencies for AAC. So strategic competencies are skills that are required and are unique to the use of AAC. So some of those skills are referring to the device if there is a communication breakdown, especially if they're maybe primarily or preferably verbal. Locating the device, we want to help the students locate the device and know where their devices are, and including carrying the device themselves. Gaining the attention using the device and maybe have a designated button. Maybe they need to gain the attention of a person and then show their device. And then responsibility for and caring for it. So oftentimes I have the students carry it from themselves. That means picking up from the table and building in that additional responsibility to be knowing where the device is and knowing that this device is for communication. We want to build those skills early, much like parents might teach their kids to try to clean their rooms, for example. It may not happen right away. You may have to start prompting it in the beginning, and that's okay. But we eventually want them to build the skills to know how to do it themselves. We also want to talk about peer interaction. There's a lot of research across a variety of disciplines, but that shows that with peer interactions and modelings, that increases social skills. Naturally, as humans, we learn from others. We're naturally social beings, and so we want to learn from others. There's research that supports peer tutors and mediations and helping others to build social networks. You can train peers, other peers to be supportive communication partners. This is a really helpful strategy, particularly for those who are in secondary education, such as high school or middle school, where there are a lot more volunteer opportunities. To train to be a supportive partner, to know how to navigate the device with them, how to model with the device, how to take turns with the device, giving more wait time for processing. You could do activities like tutoring or just friendly peer interactions for social contexts. In the example before, for the nature walk, that we used a peer to help talk about nature. And that was really motivating for both the peer and that individual as well. It also allows for education and advocacy. It allows you to teach other students that people communicate differently, that maybe they have different needs, and that's okay too, that they could be a supportive communication partner, regardless if it's just that learner, but across the board with different communication partners. It also increases the knowledge and concepts and increased communication across modalities. So you're able to use these communication methods along with different peers, different situations, different contexts as well. What I like about peers compared to maybe usual staff members is that peers can be a little bit more unexpected in terms of what they might say or have different thoughts and ideas than maybe staffs. And so we can use peers to be a great model for communication. This is an example of how you can incorporate a peer. The YouTube channel is Vicky Clark and the AAC Chicks at DTA Schools. And then you can search Conversations with Kendall, AAC Aided Language Input. But in this, It is an SLP, but we could train our peers or the peers of that student to talk about it as well, to talk about their interests. So they're just having a general conversation about the day.
Turned on. My camera on my iPad. So on my iPad, I turned on my camera.
I turn on camera, iPad.
Okay? Is that okay with you?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
I appreciate it. Kendall, you told me, you said you were tired today, huh?
I'm tired.
I wonder why. I have a question. Why
Why?
are you
You.
feeling tired?
I'm tired.
Why are you tired?
Yes,
Yeah, I wonder why you're tired. Let me see. Are you tired because you had too much driving? Was there too much driving today?
drive.
You drove a lot. So much. You had a big drive to get over here, huh?
What I love about this video is that they're just having general conversations, using a little bit similar to that FBI method, talking about the feelings, maybe why. And it's a low stakes thing. They're just having a general conversation. We can train peers and even staff members to have conversations about what they're feeling, maybe why, and talking about their interests as well. Another evidence-based strategy for AAC intervention is using personal narratives. Develop meaningful and personal narratives about themselves. It is research-based, and we can use recasting and aided language modeling to talk about some of their interests. We can use photographs of personal experiences or videos, social media. And if you think about it, we do this a lot. Social media, Instagram, we like to share our own stories. We like to tell people about our vacations. You could use a collage of pictures using magazines, drawings, or other videos. And it often creates a little bit of your personal and social identity as well. So some things that you could do is on, this is grid 3 on a device. This is just an example for myself, is that we make stories about ourselves and personal narratives. So this is an example I made with another student about how I got my cat, and then another ski trip I went on. And so you can use these and you could program the stories into it. Also, it also helps create social contexts about interests as well. So if I know someone else has a cat, I can replay this story. And so in this program, what I did was, although it says my cat story as a button, it goes into a longer narrative. Same thing with the ski trip. And so that's a way to talk about past events a little bit more effectively, and we can help our learners be able to do that. I start externally. So we talk about it together, we help kind of make a story, and then I'll program a longer narrative in a button later on. But it's also important long-term because it's also effective for things like Instagram. For another older individual who is primarily a spelling communicator on an AAC device, we've used imitated Instagrams. We also found it effective to make an Instagram eventually with that individual so that their loved ones, their cousins, and their grandparents could see what that individual's up to as well. Again, of course, you have to consult with parents, but that was really motivating for both the family members and the student as well. There's also a bunch of different apps such as Pictello, Awesome Calendar, and Picture Calendar that kind of can do the same thing. What's helpful is that if they have challenges communicating about the past, like what they did this weekend, they can go to an event that already happened, pull it up, and show it as well. So that's another option too. We also can think about it in a PowerPoint. I've made it simple where I got a picture from the family about maybe a vacation, and they made their own sentence, and I put it in, regardless of grammar context. I just said, oh, I go to Disney. So being able to build the social contexts and be able to share it. It's also really helpful to share it with the family so they could use it as well in other social contexts. You can also see it in literacy and social skills as well. For younger grades, we've done things like reading buddies, where we've trained a peer to be effective communicators using AAC and modeling. And so they would go to, like our middle schoolers would go to younger classrooms, or high schoolers can go to younger classrooms and do reading buddies, talk about a book or read a book together. You can use modeling. It's also great to train sibling or other family members, whether it's younger or older, those who have some functional literacy skills, to talk about the books. It's a great way to practice shared and joint activities. And then you could provide communication supports for all learners. So in the example, the book is The Way I Feel. And then I had some book or communication supports around feelings as well. You can expand it farther than feelings too. You could talk about breaks and being all done. You can work on commenting too. Oh, look at that girl. You can build some of those other commenting features and not just talk about the book, but how you may interact with the book as well. We can also think about social participation as well, as a way to gain attention, like raising hands or having a call on me button. Another way to increase classroom participation as a functional skill is practicing call and response. So all of the, in a classroom in the past that I've supported, they had a way to talk. They always did a morning calendar. And so we use the calendar page to help everyone be able to do a call and response. So today is, and that everyone is able to press the button for Monday, but then if they didn't, they wanted to say verbally, that was other options for other students. Other students can interact with it too. You just have to develop the expectations of when it's okay to use another student's device and when it's not okay, and how often that is. You can incorporate it into group activities, and then sustain attention towards other learning activities, especially in a group setting, because that can be challenging for everyone. It is about that 50-minute mark. So really quick, I want to thank you for participating in this webinar. And so to obtain the certificate of completion, you must fill out the form at the certificate of completion link provided on the email for this training. Please write down this code as it will be required to receive the certificate. The code is JE112023. Again, the code is JE112023. So continuing on with this webinar, we also can provide visual supports. So this is an example for a show and tell. They can practice asking questions and making comments about the show and tell. So we want to provide AAC supports along a variety of contexts, and this could be helpful across all students, not just individuals who use AAC primarily, but individuals who maybe have challenges who are primarily verbal, who have challenges thinking about what kind of questions to say, what kind of nice comments they can say. And it's a great idea under universal design as well. The National Joint Committee for Communication Needs of Persons with Severe Disabilities developed a Communication Bill of Rights, so that it's the Bill of Rights for communication, meaning that they have the right to interact socially, the right to request, to refuse, express, make choices, to talk about things that they like, to complain, to be able to talk or communicate for a variety of reasons. You can get this on the ASHA website as well, or if you look up Communication Bill of Rights, there are a lot of different examples. But it's really important to think about that, not just using requesting, but thinking about how to, what other reasons that an individual might request. So let's put it all together. So how can we plan and execute an activity to encourage social skills? And so what I like to start with is what is important to the learner. Maybe not even to yourself, but what's important to the learner. Is it something about functional skills that they need to do for the classroom? Is it for friendship skills? What kind of important friendship skills are important? What kind of transitional skills? So if they're getting a little bit older and they're about to transition from high school to maybe a job or volunteer program. And we also want to think about leisure activities. Many of our students take a lot of breaks during the day. So what kind of effective leisure activities might be there? And so we want to really follow their social interests, whatever that is. We can help. How can you bridge that gap between their interests and yours and kind of combine those things to maybe be effective and build that relationship with that person? If it's stimming, how can you incorporate yourself to stimming, or what are other ways that they can maybe talk about stimming as well? So thinking about guiding your lessons is, what part of social communication can I include in this lesson? Is it going to be something friendship versus functional academics? Is it a different part of social communication? What part is it? What's important to that learner? How and what will I model and support with AAC? So do I need to find where those words are on the device? What kind of vocabulary is important? Do they have that vocabulary on their device? Do I need to make navigational scripts to help them be able to go to that word on their device? Are there additional visuals or topic pages or boards that they need? So thinking about social context as an AAC, how can I incorporate peers? Is it something that they can build a relationship community with? Or is it important for that participation? Do I need to train or educate other peers and advocate for that student? Are there natural social opportunities? What peers are available? That's going to be really tough. That's what I find toughest in supporting some of these social interactions, is finding available peers. Then how can staff or the clinician support the student? So oftentimes a student may go to that staff member, especially if they have a one-to-one staff support. And I like to make sure that the staff provides a redirection towards a peer. So if a student comes up to me saying, oh, look at the drawing I made, I'll say, great, that's really cool. You should show your other friend, so that it builds other social interactions as well. What are other functional skills that the staff or clinician can support? Do they need to make other materials or development? What kind of prompting? Do we need a full prompts or just minimal prompting? And what's the expectation of the student versus staff in that social context? So as an example, I have a 5th grader with autism with a mild intellectual disability. They are primarily verbal, but with some functional literacy skills. They use Touch Chat Word Power 80 on the iPad. They also receive OT and speech in school, and they receive private ABA services outside of school as well. He participates in the general education 50% of the school day. He usually plays by himself. He has challenges sustaining attention and participating in learning activities. There is some emotional dysregulation occasionally, particularly if it doesn't go his way. And then the special interests are video games and movies. So as a school team, how can we support their AAC and social skills together? So in the picture, this is an example of what Touch Chat Word Power 80 looks like. It has a functional keyboard, but also has some pictures of words as well. So social communication, what kind of functional or academic skills are we thinking about? We're thinking about some of the emotional regulation and participation in learning activities. That might be hard, but we also want to build some friendship skills. In this case, we chose Venom, which is a video game that he likes to play, but also the movie as well. The example is here. What kind of AAC and visual supports? So we provided some navigational strips, screenshots, and advocacies, which we'll see on the next page. So this is an example of the advocacy page. In the top is an example of the advocacy page. This is the one that we saw earlier, but we made a similar one for that individual based on his specific needs. Something that we've also done as well was to create a navigational strip to talk about advocacy pages. So if that staff member notices he's having some challenges, she would show this so that he can navigate to his advocacy page. To help support learning activities, we also made a quick advocacy strip on their workspace. So regardless if they're using the high-tech board or verbally communicating, that they have a reminder that they could say, yes, no, I don't know, bathroom, more, or stop, to begin some of those advocacy skills as well. Something that we also continue to do is that we encourage all peers to use advocacy boards. So it's not just him, but all peers. So we made it a classroom thing. We also made it as part of their morning circle time to talk about feelings, because sometimes talking about their feelings was a non-preferred activity, and that we made it as part of the circle, morning circle for that classroom. So outside of doing the calendar talk, they would have the time to talk about, oh, today I'm feeling happy, today I'm feeling sad. So we incorporated all peers to model talking about the feelings on the device as well. What is the expectation of the staff was to acknowledge the feelings and modeling and providing those redirections as well. But the goal was to use that communication supports during some of those dysregulations. Something I realized I didn't add on the slides was that for the individual who had a special interest with Venom, if it was hard talking about themselves, we put it onto Venom, would be the character that we're talking about the feelings, kind of even if it's in a similar context. But we also had him talk about Venom. So do you like Venom to other students to increase some of those social interactions as well. As another example, I have a 10th grader who has autism with intellectual disability. He's primarily nonverbal. He uses an iPad with LAMP Words for Life. He receives OT and speech in school. He's primarily in the special education classroom, but he attends adapted BE class. He's usually by himself, an occasional emotional dysregulation. His special interests include walking around the school, Sesame Street videos on YouTube as well. So as a school team, how can we support AAC and social skills? This is another similar example to one that we've already discussed, but we did a lunchtime walk club. And so we primarily worked on friendship skills because he's older. We wanted him to build some friendship skills. So what we did was we were working on directing and increasing some of the social interactions. So we made us a special interest group, walking around campus or the high school during lunchtime. And so they were able to walk with peers, other classmates or other volunteer peers. Siblings were also invited to walk around the school and to talk about it. And so that student would be able to tell us, oh, let's go up, let's go down, let's go left, let's go right, and talk about which different classrooms. So he was directing the group, and they all took turns directing too, to work on some of that back and forth communication and that social interactions as well. What AAC and visual supports did we do? So we did a social story talking about it and video modeling about what are some of the expectations for walking around during lunchtime. And then we also provided visuals on how to direct others. So we did some navigational strips similar to what we've seen before that help him navigate to, if he wanted to go upstairs, that he can say go and then find the word upstairs as well. For peers, again, we use a lunchtime walk group. So using a variety of peers that were available, usually volunteers from other organizations and clubs, engaging in likes and having natural conversations too. So likes and dislikes, things what they did this weekend, and to increase not just talking about walking, but also being able to talk about other things that might be relevant to other students. For the staff, we assisted in some of those redirections. So if the student had challenges staying on topic, we would help kind of redirect it. But we also tried to take a step back as well. And we tried being the modeling for the volunteers about how to model for that student. So we also want to think about, what about after school? What I mean by after school is, what about high school? What about after high school? There's a lot of research that shows that, or a common theme across these kind of studies after high school, is that there's limited preparation for individuals, and that they felt that they had a hard time after high school because of less structure, less opportunities for peers and access. So we want to think about, how can we support them long term? What are skills that are going to be helpful? So we see oftentimes for individuals after they leave high school, particularly with disabilities, that there's limited participation for life after school. We lose oftentimes, they're outside of long-established routines, networks, and services. It's much harder, at least sometimes in the state of Washington, to find services for anyone who is a little bit older, past the age of 21. You can collaborate with families about what are those next steps, what they think about for that student in the future. How can we kind of align both of those goals and needs? We want to also respect the autonomy to the individual. What do they want after school as well? And so we want to plan for effective transitions for the individual as a whole person, both functional, but also group-driven, experience in social networks. So thinking about some of those friendship skills, along with some of those functional skills, and what could be important for them. So thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, please let me know. My email is listed here. And again, thank you so much for attending this presentation today.